All right, Infernal Blessings. We are back with another video. A couple quick announcements before I begin. I try to make these brief due to the fact press for time at about 20 to 25 minutes. Again, Black Magic Essentials 101 is your last week to sign up. That's going to be taking place this Saturday, August 24th, noon to 4 p.m. Make sure you get your tickets. Simple way. Just you send the cost of the one-day workshop seminar on the Black Magic Essentials 101. It's $56. You just can pay via PayPal using this email address, khnum19@gmail.com. You can also send a Cash App, pay by Cash App, $capital BANITI9. And just including your payment notes, your name and your email address, and you'll get the link later in the week. Well, a couple days, because we're only a few days away, a little less than 5-6 days away. All right, that's the Black Magic Essentials 101 workshop and seminar this Saturday, August 24th, noon to 4 p.m. Also, the 7th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. You can sign up for that now, whether you want to attend live or virtually. Shoot me an email. I'll send you the instructions, the cost, how to sign up. I know a couple of you, we have some new people that have actually just signed up today. So if you want to sign up for that, now's the time. You just, again, shoot me an email. I'll send you the information. For those that did sign up, make sure you check your email. You will get a digital itinerary like we've done the last several years. The week of the conference, it'll have the full schedule, the presenters, the workshops. So for those that have paid, and I know there's a few that have already, so that can sign up for, all right? And then real quick, if you're interested in a spiritual reading or a consultation, I offer various different types of readings, Catholic demonic readings, Santa Muerte readings, Egyptian oracle readings, shadow work readings, deity readings. If you're interested in any of the aforementioned, shoot me an email at khnum19@gmail.com. And please include in your email the time zone that you live in, very important, and please include a weekly availability. Okay, please don't send me an email, I'm available Tuesday at 4 o'clock. That's not availability. I know I say this on and off. It's because I still get emails like that. Hey, I want to do a reading at Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Again, I wish it worked like that, and I wish it was that easy, but the schedule ain't that free like that, where I can just immediately, kick in a date that's going to work conveniently for the first time or day that you pick, all right? So if you're interested, shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com, and we'll set that up. Also, if you want to sign up for classes, the way you sign up for the classes I offer, it's the #1 email I get. How do I sign up for classes? What kind of classes are you offer? This, that, and the third. Go to the Patreon page. That's how you do it. Patreon.com/Baniti. BANITI, tier 3. That's the tier you want to join. That's going to give you access to the 3 private classes I do every month on Patreon, in addition to the group ritual we do together at the end of the month. And also keep in mind, when you join, it doesn't just give you access from the day you join. Moving forward, you get access to everything in the archive, including the ritual work, the group work, in addition to the monthly group rituals. So you're talking about almost 5 years worth of classes. That's a lot. Trust me when I tell you, it's a lot. You won't even have enough of time. You won't even be able to get all that work done in the next 10 years. Trust me when I tell you. Okay? If you want to see exactly what type of classes I'm offering before you sign up, just go to the Patreon page again, patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. You can click the collections page. When you go onto the page, click the collections section, and you'll see all the classes titled and archived, and we're constantly adding new classes to those, and plus new topics I gradually add in. So again, if you're looking to do something to take your spirituality to the next level, you don't want to just sit on the sidelines no more and be an armchair magician. You want to get in the game and you want to actually play now, and actually put in the work and get the growth and the results. I promise you won't be disappointed. Check it out, patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI, tier 3. All right. Don't forget to check out the social media pages, Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos 2 words on Facebook, and Primordial Chaos 3 on TikTok. That's the best way to stay up for the latest happenings, updates, classes, information. Pretty much everything I'm doing is posted on those sites. on those social media platforms. And last but not least, don't forget to check out the Primordial Chaos podcast, available on Spotify, on major podcast platforms. The direct link to the podcast, my contact email address, the social media pages, the direct link for the Primordial Chaos Patreon page to sign up for classes. All of that information is in the description box of this video that you are watching right now. All right, so I got an email. Again, there's going to be a video about an email I received. I've been meaning to get to this. And actually, right before I got on, I responded to this person's email, letting them know I will be doing a video on this. So this is the video. It was a good question was posed. Now, though the question was posed specifically from the perspective of Santa Muerte, it really applies across the board. But this was the question, and this was asked in the email. And again, it was specifically referenced to Santa Muerte, but I'm going to expand this because this really applies across the board. So the question was, and I believe he read some work from, I think, Edwin Romero, if I got that correct. I know last name was Romero. So the question was, how do you know you're called to, for an example, to work with Santa Muerte? I'm going to say this applies to any deity. How do you know you're called to work with any deity or spirit? Okay, I'm going to pose that question. All right, and I guess the person he referenced, Romero, said that Santa Muerte is not a separate deity, but is just really represents the process of death. Now that is correct to a degree, but what we have to factor in to the person that wrote the email, to people listening, out there. And again, this is not just restricted to Santa Muerte. It could be Set, it could be Kali, it could be Lilith, it could be Lucifer, it could be Samael, it could be any of them. Okay. It is not restricted just to Santa Muerte. So I just want to make that clear. Okay? Now, one, you have to understand, when you come across, whether it's my channel, what I teach, or you're reading books from authors, everybody's going to have their own perspective and understanding. So one, I'm going to share with you my understanding and what I teach. Okay? So you're going to have some people like the gentleman you quoted, Romero, that says it's just a process. It's not an actual separate entity. It's not an actual separate deity. And then the question was, if that's the case, how do you know you're being called? And that's a great question. Well, real simple. First of all, I teach this. It's a combination of both. It all has its essence and its foundation in your subconscious mind. So what do I mean by that? That's why you always see me over the years always referring to that first Hermetic principle. All is mental. Mental is all. The universe is mental. It all starts or has its origin in the mind. If you also, over the years, have looked, or if you've been in my classes, you've probably seen other YouTube videos where I exclusively clearly talk about how even though you might have what you are interpreting external experiences with a spirit or a deity or a demon, and it could be Lucifer, it could be Santa Muerte, it could be whoever, though it's appearing and it's creating, and you're having an experience where you're seeing this external manifestation. I clearly explained many times over the years, when you look upon images, when you absorb information, you are given the deity shape, life, and form of how that deity is going to manifest for you what appears to be externally. Okay? So as I've said before over the years, there are some people who will say they're archetypes and understand the full definition of what an archetype is, that they're just symbolic, or because an archetype can represent the whole concept, it could fit into the category of many things. So what he was saying in the email about it representing the process of death itself, that is an archetype. Because people just think archetypes refer to deities. That's incorrect. Go look up the definition for all of those listening, right? So it is Santa Muerte is the archetype of what the process of death represents itself. Now, the other part of the question was the different colors or the aspect, right? Now, you got to understand the history and the origin, for an example, of when you go back to the 7 aspects, for those who are familiar, right? The colors represent certain vibrational frequencies of what Santa Muerte represents. If you look at the color, it's in line with the frequency or the consciousness of what it represents. The gold, money, red, passion, if you were doing works with the red aspect, right? White, healing, black, darker works of sorcery, etc. But notice those are concepts that come later in Western traditions. So you also have to understand some of the stuff that's out there, especially in regards to Santa Muerte. A lot of the Catholicism stuff and a lot of the westernized stuff, that's something that comes afterwards that certain select individuals make that connection with. But again, you have to make that connection with it within your subconscious mind. Because we do know, if you work candle magic and other systems, colors carry vibrations, frequencies, and they do have an effect on you, right? Especially if you understand, again, candle magic. So the colors is more of a later, more modern thing. But I think the more important thing is to understand, is deity real? Is it separate? Or is this just, in this case, represent a certain character or archetype? So I don't have no problem when you look at Santa Muerte as a whole, 100%, for an example, it is the death process. But there are certain people who are able to tap into their subconscious mind, and they have the ability. What happens is, when you understand how your spirit works, your subconscious mind, you start to create these, or what appears to be these external manifestations. Now, it doesn't mean that it's separate. It's still part of the death process. Technically, it's not separate because it all has its point of origin to where everything begins within you, which is your subconscious mind. Okay? So, a couple of things also that you have to factor in, which is key, which is critical, and which is very important. Okay, a lot of the information you're going to read, that's going to come from a different perspective. There are going to be some people who come from a more esoterical, occult perspective. There are going to be people who might be influenced by religion and spirituality, this, that, and the other. So that's going to affect people's perception and interpretation on certain spiritual systems. Now, the question whether you're called, okay, that's something that arises in your psyche. So let me give you an example. It's real simple. If you're called, so if you pick up a book on a topic, on any occult left-hand path topic, right, and it sparks an interest in you, okay? It sparks an interest in you. It's going to motivate you to want to explore that spiritual system more. That's your calling. That's how you know you're called. It's gonna want you to. So if you're reading books, for an example, it could be Set. So they call Set the god of chaos and destruction, the god of the desert and storms. Does that mean he's just exclusively, it means he's tied to the desert, storms, and chaos? No, that's an archetype too. And there's aspects of Set, for an example, that one can connect with in what the concept of that deity represents. So the calling is simple. If you're reading something, you're going to be called within your psyche. Something's going to arise in your psyche to interest you to want to explore working with that deity even further. So in the case of Santa Muerte, at some point, if an individual or practitioner, they came across something, it could have been a book, they might have walked into a botanica, they might have came across something sparked their interest. That initial process is the calling itself. It's that simple. How an individual connects, that's going to vary from person to person. As I've said many times before, you have certain people that look at deities as being actual separate aspects of themselves, which I don't teach that. Some look at it as they're all just symbolic and metaphorical, and I don't teach that either. I teach it's a combination of both. But I make it clear the external process, okay, just to make it crystal clear, is something you manifest within your subconscious mind, which still doesn't negate the fact it's all within you, okay? That's how you have to approach this. So yes, there's going to be people out there who say, oh, it's symbolic, oh, it's just the process of itself. And again, I got no problem with that because I teach certain aspects of that in a very similar way. But there's not one, and this is where sometimes people struggle. There's not one particular, per se, methodology or concept that is the know-all, tell-all. Because again, when we look at Santa Muerte, you have people, and let's just start with the very more modern, watered down, in my opinion, aspect of it. You have some people, and they usually are very caught up in the Catholicism, traditional aspects of Santa Muerte, that think Santa Muerte, like some Catholics do, they think it is a separate entity. Like how somebody would look at, a Catholic who worships one of the saints, or they look at Jesus as an actual separate entity from themselves, this, that, or the other. So what I'm trying to put in very simplistic terms, they look at it from a religious mindset. That's a religious mindset. And I don't teach anybody to look at working with deity, period, in that aspect, because that'll confuse you. Okay? And then again, you have some people who think it's just all symbolic and metaphorical, and I don't agree with that. Like, let's for an example, you look at Luciferians or Satanists. You have some Luciferians or Satanists, some think Lucifer is the literal archetype, and they kind of approach Lucifer like a Christian would the God of the Bible. And the same thing with Satan. No, and that's not how it works. So if when I'm trying to tell you is how I teach, it's a fine line between both. Because when you go into meditation, for an example, it could be somebody who looks at it just as being symbolic, let's just say, or looks at it as a process itself. Well, there's many aspects to the process and the experience. Okay, so I'm trying to explain this the best way I can. So let me explain it to you from my experience, because that's the best I can do, having said all that. So for an example, if I'm working with Santa Muerte or Set, I studied, learn, absorb everything about what they represent, right? Santa Muerte represents the death process. Set represents making order out of chaos. He's the god of chaos, only because he brings the chaos up, so one makes the ability to make order out of it. In that work, though, when I create ritual work or do invocations to either of the aforementioned, I might have a visual experience or some type of imagery or some type of a spiritual experience connecting to that work. So the question is, does that mean that that's something separate? And does that go against the process as a whole? No. Now, others who have their different opinion, interpretation on it, might say yes. But again, you can't look, there's not one, that's what's unique about this path. There's not one tell-all, be-all methodology or process to this. Okay? And somebody can think that, but that's just not the reality, right? I always go to that one phrase that I put up, and I can't remember the philosopher. And the saying goes, you have your way of doing things. I think it's Descartes, if I could be wrong. It's posted on one of my pages. You have your way of doing things, I have mine. As far as the right way to do things, it doesn't exist. And that's essentially what I'm trying to say. Each individual, if you're working with any of this spirituality from an occult left-hand path perspective, you have to understand it's a path of self-mastery. It's a unique path. Everybody's going to have their own unique perspective and experiences. That essentially is the answer as a whole in a nutshell. So for an example, if I see somebody, whether it's Set or Santa Muerte, and they look at Santa Muerte as some deity to pray to, some external deity outside of themselves, I don't agree with that, but that's their prerogative. That's their opinion. I don't teach anybody to do that, but if that's a person that's doing that, they have their right to do that if they want. They have their own free will, and that's what real free will is about. We may not agree with it. There's many things I don't agree with, but I don't spend my time or waste my time trying to enforce my perspective, right? Because that person can just turn around and say the same thing to me. I don't agree with anything you're saying. So I'm trying to show a bunch of different perspectives, because it's a great question, right? And it's a good question to spark conversation. And for all those listening, it's a good measuring rod to ask yourself, what perspective and approach are you coming from? Are you in that same mindset? Are you confused? Are you unsure? This, that, or the other? So this is kind of how you have to look at it. This is kind of how you have to look at it, right? You really need to, and this is why I've always encouraged people for years, read. When you get into a certain spiritual system or you establish a relationship, and it's crazy because this is a good topic too, because this is some of the things we're going to be discussing in the Black Magic Essentials 101. We're going to go in depth with that. That's going to be part of the establishing a relationship with deity and spirit. Okay? That's part of the process of establishing exactly the methodology you're using to establish that relationship. Okay? So it's something you should be asking, yourself, right? If you're on this path. But know when you get on this path, if you're on this path, that's what makes this path unique. So you're going to run across people who do things that may be completely adverse to the way you do them, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with it just as quick as they might turn around and not agree with your perspective. And remember, everything is about perspective. People's perspective, which ties into the word perception, are going to perceive things or have a perspective on something based on their experience and their knowledge. So this is important to really understand when you're reading books by authors. So I always tell people when you're reading a book, because also and understand etymology of words. When you're getting the word author, which has root in the word authoritative. So when somebody's authoring a book on something, whether they're aware of it or not, or whether you're the reader who buys the book, they're making a claim to have some type of authoritative information on the topic. But this is why I encourage people when you're reading books by authors, get a thorough history to the best of your ability of the author's background. Because that's going to help you understand to a certain degree what influences them when they come to their conclusions, their theories, this, that, and the other. That's going to give you an understanding. So if I'm reading a book about Santa Muerte that's written by a Catholic, I'm going to be probably holding a book in my hand that's an aspect of more modern day, watered down aspect of Santa Muerte from the viewpoint of Catholicism. And as I told you guys before over the years, for an example, she comes from the indigenous aspect of the Mayan culture as the goddess of the underworld. And a lot of the indigenous people from their culture actually look at it as an insult of how modern day Mexicans and in Mexico and how now it's spread all over the West, how she's become known as this female Grim Reaper deity affiliated and connected with Catholicism and etc. So understanding a certain aspect and level of history and doing research and background on authors and teachers, what was their upbringing? What did they study? Were they influenced by any schools of thought? Did they attend any universities? All those things do play a factor on an individual presenting information, okay? That has a lot to do with it, and that will help you get some answers. But at the end of the day, it's initially up to you to decide what is your approach and perspective of how you're going to work with a deity, spirit, god, goddess, or demon. Okay? So, in essence, what I'm saying in short is I look at it as a combination of both. You do have what appears to be some external, it doesn't mean it's separate, some external experiences, but it's still created within, so you're not separating anything from that process. Right? That's me. And I'm not saying everybody has that same approach or perspective and that's going to work for everybody, because it's not. So you're dealing with a concept that's not going to have one specific answer. It's something to be dialogued, conversed about, and then it's up to the individual to draw that conclusion. And I want to make this clear. This does not just apply to Santa Muerte. I kind of took this email and I want to apply it across the board, because people also struggle with this understanding. Again, if it's working with Set, if it's working with the Goetia, if it's working with this, that, or the other. I can't give you the answer to that. You have to come to the conclusion of that through your ritual work, and your spiritual work is what opens you up to getting clarity on questions like this. I can give I can give some feedback on it, some input on it. But at the end of the day, and it's a great question, and this is why, again, like I say, was one of the this question is like one of the motivating factors, or a question in this realm or perspective of things, is why I wanted to do the Black Magic Essentials 101. Because I know there's people out there who, look, I'm gonna keep it real. There's some people out there who are on the occult and the left-hand path, but they still have a very religious mindset. Okay? That's just 100%. There are some people who as I said before, I run into these. Oh, everything is symbolic. It's not really real. It's just that's not true. That's your opinion and your perspective. That's your experience. Okay? And as I said before, you can't say it's all external because, like I said, if you think everything is external, then you're back to servitude, being mentally indoctrinated, serving things, worshiping things, and you're also saying you're inferior to things outside of yourself. So yes, Santa Muerte is the process of death itself, because every aspect of what death is represented in Santa Muerte. But in that death is also resurrection, regeneration, and renewal. Because the death is not just all about gore and death, for those that may or may not know, because after death it leads to a higher transformational state. And the mysteries of Santa Muerte are not just about death and dying, it's also about understanding when things are regenerated and renewed. Because after, again, it doesn't just mean physical death. Understanding the power of death, of the death process in death. It could be a spiritual death. It could be a mental death. It could be emotional death. Because death comes in those many forms. And as I've told many people over the years, in this physical lifetime that you're living right now and on your spiritual journey and the path that we're all on, you will die many spiritual deaths. Okay? When a great change comes, a new cycle, where you might completely change, your circle of friends changes, or there's certain things in your life you gravitate to no more and you go a whole different path, new doors, that's a death. Because one door is now complete, one cycle is now complete, and now a new door is getting ready to open. So that's dying a spiritual death. Think about, for those of you who have been on some type of path of consciousness or awakening, the occult, the left-hand path, look back at your stages of growth. You call them stages of growth. I call them cycles where you can even pinpoint certain periods in your life where you died and completely rid yourself of something, and then you renewed yourself through another process. That's also understanding the mystery of the process of death through working with Santa Muerte. Because if you can't see that change and that growth as you reflect back, then what is it you're doing on this path? Then you need to question it is what you're doing, because it's not working. All right? So it's not a simple question, because it's something to be dialogued and conversed, because it's a topic that does not have a specific answer. It's not a yes or no question. It's not something you can answer in one phrase, because we have to tie in all those elements I just discussed. Perspective, if we're reading this and we're learning things through books and teachers, we also have to understand clearly what's their background, how were they raised, what were they influenced, where did they study, what were their influences as far as what they read, did they come from a specific spiritual school of thought, this, that, and the other. All that plays a factor in, okay? That's why, like, I give you guys my background over the years. I've been clear on that on and off over the years. Tell you the different esoterical occult orders I belong to, what my influences were, the different spiritual paths that I transformed with over the years, going back as a child from Catholicism, on up through studying the Sumerian culture, ancient Egypt, Masonry, into OTO, the Rosicrucian Order, Temple of Set, etc. All that is going to play a part, but that's all the experience that I've gathered. And now it gives me a fresher, more wider perspective. And again, doesn't mean I never approach anything with thinking everybody's going to agree with what I say or do, because that's foolish. Or I would be foolish, and that's foolishness. So again, I leave you with that famous quote. You have your way of doing things, I have mine, as far as for the right way to do things. And this should be your approach with everybody. It doesn't exist. That's my point. Okay? So, it's a good email. Hopefully to shed some clarity, and hopefully those listening, maybe it opened them up to a greater awareness, or maybe something they needed answers to. That's why I thought it was a good topic of question. So again, look, get into that Black Magic Essentials 101 this weekend. You won't be disappointed. We're going to be covering a lot of powerful stuff. So definitely sign up for that. Check it out. And we will definitely talk about it and go from there. Other than that, that's going to wrap it up for me. Again, if you need to reach out to me for a spiritual consultation, a reading, or if you want to sign up for classes, or you want to check out the social media pages, all the links are in the description box of the video you're watching now. The link for my email address, the social media pages, the podcast, the direct link for the Primordial Chaos Patreon page to sign up for classes. Oh, and by the way, I do have on my Patreon page a Santa Muerte tier. For those that really exclusively want to learn about working with Santa Muerte, I have an entire tier mentorship program dedicated to that. Okay? So for those that might want to further the interest in that or anything else, take a look at that. That might be something you might be interested in. That is on the Patreon page. All right? Other than that, I appreciate everybody tuning in. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. All right? Final blessings. We will talk soon. I'm out of here.